Everybody, welcome to the show. Around the nation right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Got a great Wednesday show for you guys today. Not a lot of Trump stories. Actually, I don't think I have anything on Trump. We will talk a little bit about Illinois last night. We also have a Fox News contributor that is no longer a contributor. Fascinating. That's going to be fun. Breitbart is circling the drain. Very interesting. We're going to check in with the Philadelphia DA and see how he's doing. And then, of course, we've got a study that Republicans, especially Betsy DeVos, needs to see on abortion. Of course, I doubt that they will actually listen to it because it actually involves facts. Oh, boy. Then, like I said, we'll talk a little bit about the Illinois race, which was, I'm not going to lie to you guys, it was a disaster for progressives. We're going to talk about what happens afterward. Then we're going to go a little bit better. We'll talk about the Michigan Attorney General race. And then finally, Toys R Us. And what do they actually blame their bankruptcy on? You're going to enjoy this one. Excuse me, I am still trying to get over this stupid cold, so the coughs and the fun never seem to end. You know how this goes. All right. Anyway, so let's get going with the first segment. Oh, before I get to that, I want to thank, of course, the patrons. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Please give us a like and a share. Not only that, but you can help us out. Patreon.com/TYTNation. Help keep us independent and corporate sponsored free. Maybe help me afford my medicine. I'm just kidding on that. Okay. Don't forget Super Chat. You guys have been using the Super Chat, and that's been awesome. That really helps the show, and it allows you to send a message as well for me to read on air, and that's pretty cool as well. So thank you. Keep using that because that's great, and it helps us out a lot. All right. Before I get into the stories, I do want to mention that I want to talk a little bit about the Austin bomber. So that happened today. The Austin bomber was caught, identified, and killed today. His name, and I'm only going to say it once, Mark Anthony Condit. He is the bomber that's killed 2 people, injured several more in the Austin area by sending out packages with very sophisticated bombs. So this guy, look, we don't know a lot about him yet, but you may have noticed that he is not a Muslim. He's not African American. He's not Latino. He's white. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It is a white guy who, for some reason or another, is mailing packages to African Americans that explode. Or at least that's his first couple of victims. So I don't know. Gee, I wonder if that fits the definition of terrorism. No, you have to have a political motive. Well, I'm sure we'll find that out sooner or later. And when we do, I will talk about that as well. Okay. It's disastrous, man. Okay. Let's move on. Let's get to the stories. A Fox News contributor thinks the network has gone too far. Too far. In a letter addressed to Fox News and some of his colleagues, Colonel Ralph Peters, now Ralph Peters, of course, was a strategic analyst on Fox News. So I guess he's like a military strategic analyst. Well, I'm going to get into the details of what he talked about because it's actually pretty relevant to his criticisms of the network. But he blasted his former network for being part of what he calls a propaganda machine. He said, quote, Fox has degenerated from providing a legitimate and much-needed outlet for conservative voices to a mere propaganda machine for a destructive and ethically ruinous administration. Okay, yeah. Destructive and ethically ruinous administration. I think he nailed the Trump administration pretty well in that criticism. And propaganda, obviously, that's also correct. Now, he continues, when primetime hosts who have never served our country in any capacity dismiss facts and empirical reality to launch profoundly dishonest assaults on the FBI, the Justice Department, the courts, the intelligence community, in which I served, and not least a model public servant and genuine war hero such as Robert Mueller. All the while scaremongering with lurid warnings of deep state machinations. I cannot be part of the same organization, even at a remove. To me, Fox News is now wittingly harming our system of government for profit. That's not all. He says, today, I feel that Fox News is assaulting our constitutional order and the rule of law while fostering corrosive and unjustified paranoia among viewers. Over my decade with Fox, I was long proud of the association. Now, I am ashamed. He is shamed. Okay, so this is interesting, right? Now, notice that he's going after the Trump administration for attacking the FBI, for attacking the intelligence agencies, which, look, have all said bad things about, which have said things about Russia and Russian interference, in which the administration flatly denies. So here's Peters. Well, Peters, let me give you some details on this. Peters is a Russia analyst. So, look, he's a big believer in Russiagate, right? He believes in the Steele dossier. He believes in, look, all of that. In fact, Peters has been critical of anybody who's been friendly towards Russia for quite some time. In fact, here's him criticizing President Obama a couple of years ago. Let's watch.
Obama thinks he can romance it. He can romance Cuba. He wants to romance Iran. You know, he tried to romance Putin and he got date rape. This is a president who, after 6 years, is astonishingly, willfully naive, self-adoring, ineffective, and he also, in that interview with Steve Inskeep, that slavish interview which could have been Russian journalists interviewing Putin, he also says that we're the strongest, best positioned for the future. Our military is the greatest in history. Yes, the military he is gutting. I mean, he's amazing. He applauds himself for all that's going right in the economy, all that's going right in the world, and he avoids everything that's going wrong. The strategic landscape from Nigeria to Pakistan, from Russia to Venezuela, is almost immeasurably worse than it was when Obama took office. And the fact that Steve Inskeep didn't press him on any of the hard stuff tells you what you need to know about the state of NPR and Obama.
Okay, so I love that for a couple of reasons, right? Number one, he explains Obama as somebody who is self-adoring, ineffective, and astonishingly willfully naive. No, I think that would explain our current president. And look, if he's out criticizing, of course, and it seems like he is, criticizing the current administration, okay, that's fine. Now, he's actually 100% correct about Fox News in his criticism. Yes, they are propaganda. Welcome to something that we've known for years. As far as the military goes, and this actually adds into, I believe this is part of his criticism. This guy's a war hawk. No doubt about it. Again, he's like, oh, Obama's gutting the military. He's gutting the military. Really? He gutted the military? $600 billion? Yes, it's nothing compared to what Trump is doing. Trump is actually inflating the military. We have been doing the opposite of gutting the military. We've been shoveling money into the war machine. Billions and billions and billions of dollars. It's now over $700 billion, and the Trump administration wants to give it even more to the military. Now, he should be happy about that. This guy's a war hawk. But he seems to be a Russia war hawk. And so the reason that he's calling the president out is it has to do with the Russian narrative. It unfortunately doesn't have to do with any of the other lies that Fox News has spread over the years against poor people, against minorities, against Democrats, against liberals, against progressives, etc., etc., etc. So all that stuff was fine with Colonel Peters. Yes, of course, he has a conservative point of view, but you could actually, I don't know, be honest about the criticisms of the president, which, look, in his criticisms of President Obama, he was obviously not being factually correct. So, anyway, but hey, man, if you talk about Russia, I mean, if you're friendly with Russia, well, then that's way, way too far. Again, this guy is a war hawk. Now, that said, I believe that there is truth to Russiagate. I know there's a lot of people that get very, very angry when I admit that, yes, I believe that there is Russian interference in our elections. They tried to do it with social media bots and trolls and terrible memes. And I think that they're likely to try to do it again in the midterms. And I think I think there's enough evidence to support that kind of inclusion. What it whether or not it has to do with Trump directly, we haven't produced any sort of actionable, concrete ties yet. If Mueller has the goods, well, then he's certainly got the goods, right? But we don't know yet, and we were waiting for him to come out with those goods. Now, that said, the other issue with the Russian narrative, of course, is that it doesn't mean that Hillary Clinton is absolved from her loss, obviously, and I got to put out this disclaimer every time I talk about it, because I know there's somebody out there saying, but you're just covering for Hillary and the DNC and their chicanery during the election. No, I'm not. Absolutely not. No, Hillary Clinton is still the biggest reason why Hillary Clinton lost the election. Almost every other politician could have destroyed Donald Trump. Any smart politician could have destroyed Donald Trump. Any politician that did not have the hubris and the baggage of Hillary Clinton could have beaten Donald Trump. So, but look, I'm just telling you this because I want you to understand why he's suddenly deciding to take a stand against Fox News and their cheerleading of the president, which is, look, I've criticized Fox News for being state TV, and that's exactly what they're doing. But see, Peters, he's not going to get any points from me, right? Because he ignored Fox News when they did all their lying before. And it's only when they decide to cheerlead for the administration and push back against the intelligence agencies, which, by the way, look, a lot of these intelligence agencies are very, very conservative and very pro-war. They're very hawkish. And so, look, I'm not in favor of doing anything that involves war with Russia or another proxy war or anything like that. I'm not interested in war with Russia. I am interested in protecting our elections, and I think we can do so by maybe doing better with our media, making sure that they actually do tell the truth, and protecting our elections through things like paper ballots and stuff like that, and open primaries. And look, you get more people involved in the political process and more people involved in voting and make sure that they're supplied with actual facts, well, then that's going to make a huge difference. That's going to make it less likely for any sort of foreign power, of which there are many who would be very, very interested in doing so, from influencing our elections with propaganda and bots and bullshit. So, Anyway, look, last word on Fox News. Fox News has always been deeply harmful propaganda that has been used in every ruinous administration since their inception. So again, this guy, his sudden awakening, not buying it. This is all about, I think, him trying to push more conflict, etc., because he's a hawkish person. And I'm not interested in people who are hawkish. Okay. Let's move on here. Now, Breitbart is in a little bit of trouble. And look, I realize this segment is probably going to come off a little bit ha-ha. But I actually want to go through, and I want to try not to make it ha-ha, but actually an analysis of what works in media and what might not work in media in the state of the alt-right. All right. Now, Politico is reporting that Breitbart, the alt-right news site, whose chairman, Steve Bannon, was pushed out in January after feuding with President Donald Trump, has lost about half of its readership, according to ComScore, raising questions about its future. So let me give you the numbers, and they are quite a bit disastrous, and then I'm going to go through and get some possible explanations of what the hell is going on. Now, according to ComScore, the site dropped from 15 million unique visitors in October to 13.7 million in November, 9.9 million in December, 8.5 million in January, and 7.8 million in February, and of course the numbers continue to drop. Its ComScore figure for January was down 51% from the same month a year earlier, and the February number was down 49% from 2017. Last month was the site's least trafficked since February of 2015, 4 months before Donald Trump declared his candidacy for president. So those are disastrous numbers. Now, again, Breitbart hitched itself to Donald Trump, rose with Donald Trump, and now it has fallen with Steve Bannon. Now, to be fair, some of that drop is to be expected. I mean, look, during the election, during the primary, our numbers were fantastic. And we were getting somewhere around 1.5 to 1.7 million views per month. That's pretty good for me. Obviously not huge, not great when it comes to the YouTube landscape. I'm keeping it 100% real, and I wish it was, 3 times bigger. Since the election, we've dropped a bit. Now we're steady around 1 million. Nonetheless, right? When it's not a presidential election, your numbers, if you're a news outlet, tend to fall. Totally understand that. People do tune out. People get back to their normal lives. In the case of Breitbart, a lot of people are like, mission accomplished. We got Trump elected. He's going to MAGA, and then I can go back to watching TV. I can go back and sit on the couch and drink a couple beers. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, that is a fantastic plan. Nonetheless, there are other reasons as well. And this, of course, goes into the politics of the of viewership, right? Now, Politico notes that aside from the politics, you also have changes to Facebook's newsfeed algorithm. Well, that's hit all of us. Also, more investment by Fox News, and to go into the politics of it, Steve Bannon. And Steve Bannon is obviously, I think, a huge reason. Okay. Now, Bannon, they explained, was once Trump's campaign chairman, White House strategist, and closest ally. He is no longer. Bannon left the administration in August and returned to Breitbart, only to be forced out by the site's board after he criticized Trump and his family in Michael Wolff's book, Fire and Fury. Remember that? That was only a couple of months ago, and that book already feels like it was written back in 2015. It's insane. Now, again, so Bannon was behind the rise in Breitbart. He took over after Andrew Breitbart and hitched his wagon to Donald Trump, and then, of course, rose, and then had an unceremonious fall. It was great. Now, they said without its driving force, Breitbart has struggled to find a clear identity. And after a significantly diminished presence at this year's CPAC conference, there is a growing sense that its influence is on the wane. So, look, to me, I think this is fairly obvious. Bannon was Breitbart. Breitbart was Steve Bannon. That was his entire identity. Like, yeah, I'm like, this is the magazine, or this is the publication of Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, he's so powerful. He's in the White House. He's growing. I mean, he's diving more into politics. He's going in and he's going to fund new candidates. And watch out for Bannon. Watch out for Bannon. He was a big deal. And then suddenly he's no longer a big deal. In fact, he's essentially dropped off the face of the earth. So, and since he dropped off the face of the earth, it would make sense that his publication, or formerly his publication, dropped off the face of the earth as well. So, but look, during their rise, for all the things Bannon was, he succeeded at turning Breitbart into the home of the alt-right. And that was wildly effective during the election, during the campaign. Now, but this is just bigger, I think, than Breitbart. This entire thing that's falling apart. I've been reading a lot of stories of the alt-right also fracturing, also falling apart, also fighting amongst each other. So, not only that, but they seem to not be doing very well against Antifa. I think one of the recent stories is that Richard Spencer, he's kind of given up. He's like, yeah, Antifa has actually won. They've beaten us. I'm not going to go and try and do any more speeches at these colleges. And look, by the way, if you want to speak at a college, I don't really give a shit. I know the right all thinks, oh my God, all these liberal snowflakes, they don't want to hear our opinions. Well, number one, your opinions are shit. But number two, you have the right to have shitty opinions. And I think it's fine for you to go and speak at the colleges. People don't have to hear you. And I think actually the best thing is, oh, you want to go and speak at the college? Okay. Well, let's bring in our own counter speaker, and let's all go to that event and have Richard Spencer sit there with 2 people in the audience. That'd be awesome. And then have somebody film it, take pictures, and then be like, ha ha, Richard Spencer, you are deeply, deeply unpopular. Because that's the way to crush their movement. That's the real way to crush their movement. But anyway, now, look, as far as what would have happened with Bannon, there's a good chance that this would have happened anyway had he not been kicked out of Breitbart. But I don't know. I do think that him getting kicked out of the White House was the first nail in the coffin. Now, they read as Bannon's star rose along with Trump, Breitbart benefited, said its former spokesman Kurt Bardella. Quote, at one point, Breitbart was considered must-read status because it was thought of as one of the only places to get a window into what the president was thinking. So, hey, if you want to know what Donald Trump's thinking, read an episode or read a article from Breitbart. Because that's what, when Steve Bannon was there, that's what he would put on the desk before John Kelly. He'd be like, hey, Trump, read this. You and we're the same mind on this one. I think you'd really like this article. When really Donald Trump isn't of any mind. He has no ideology. He's an idiot, and he barely reads. Nonetheless, if you think that reading Breitbart gets you into the mind of the president, okay then. That's what a lot of conservatives thought. All right. But now, Bardella continues, with Bannon exiled from both the site and Trump's orbit, that's no longer the case. You know who's taken over? This shouldn't be a surprise. It's Fox News. Fox News has supplanted Breitbart as having the banner. And look, there's more research here, right? This is Rob Ferris, research director at Harvard's Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society. He said that Breitbart's rise was in some way facilitated by Fox News being very slow to embrace Donald Trump. Yeah, I remember that time. I remember when they were like, oh, I don't know about Trump. We should go for the more winnable establishment Republican, or maybe like your Ted Cruz or something like that. Anybody but Trump. Anybody but Trump. He used to be a New York liberal. Do you remember that? Yeah, we know. But he was the same kind of con man all along. But for a while, for a long time during the primary, until Donald Trump started winning, Fox News was not behind them. And then slowly, they got on the Trump train. Now, Ferris says, quote, a big part of Breitbart's success was that there was such a niche to be filled that Fox News was not able to fill at that point. But now, with Fox's primetime hosts having fully embraced the president, the importance of Breitbart is diminished. And he says finally, quote, Fox News is the gorilla in the room. Look, and this gorilla is shameless in their propaganda that supports the president. Now, there's more problems when it comes to Breitbart, other than being taken over by Fox News, of course, when it comes to servicing the president and being read by the president's supporters. You also have money problems. Every company needs to make money, and guess what? You know, even what I do requires money. It requires me to make some money from advertisers. Now, for Breitbart, there was a boycott on their advertisers. In fact, its number of direct advertisers since the boycott had come into effect has been slashed from around 250 at the beginning of 2017 to just 17 now, according to the advertising consulting firm Media Radar. That is a massive hit. Now, does that mean Breitbart is done? Well, look, if you were any normal company, well, then sure. I mean, they would be done. But you also have to look at a lot of the media companies on the right and where they get their funding. It is not organic. Most likely, they've got a billionaire that is backing them. And in the case of Breitbart, that's 100% true. Now, The Blaze, that's Glenn Beck's, of course, business. They weren't so lucky. I don't think they have any billionaire backers behind them. And that's why, of course, they've been literally on fire for like the past year. They had to lay off most of their staff, and you haven't really heard much from them as of late. But Breitbart does have a wealthy backer. They have a wealthy donor. That's Rebecca Mercer, the Mercer family. Now, the Mercers, they also own Cambridge Analytica, which is in a little bit of trouble right now if you're caught up on some of the recent news about them. But right now, they've got that billionaire money. And as long as they have that billionaire money, they don't need no stinking advertisers. They don't need to make a profit. No, they could take a loss. And they can operate on a loss because they've still got that sugar daddy money. So, look, they'll survive. As long as they got that money, even if they have no ads and down to 10 readers, which is certainly something that I could see happening. But as far as Breitbart being on the outs, again, they're going back to where they were, back to the fringes. So, and look, that's where they belong. And this time I hope they stay there. Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a quick break. We got more stories, so stay right here. Make sure to like and share if you haven't already. And we'll be back right after this very quick break. All right, back and around the nation, right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. I think we'll go to the next story here. Toys R Us. Who says I don't listen to the audience? All right. Let's go from that to blame game. Okay. Now, look, everybody who grew up, hold on, let me start that again. So everybody who's around my age remembers Toys R Us. I mean, look, if you're a millennial, odds are you've either been to Toys R Us, you've gotten, or your parents have gone to Toys R Us, things like that. So they're a bit of a, I guess they were a bit of a mainstay when it came to toys back in the day. But unfortunately for them, they were unable to adapt to some of the new circumstances, the rise of the internet, for example, Amazon, etc. But if you ask them about why they're going bankrupt, well, then they would come up with a different answer. See, they actually believe that it's not their fault or not any of the debt load that I'll explain later. No, it's those stinking millennials. How dare you not have enough children? Now, they said, is according to, I believe, Business Insider, retailers, particularly ones that target newborns and children, are taking notice that millennials are not having children. They wrote in its 2017 annual filing that the declining birth rate was hurting U.S. sales. They said, quote, most of our end customers are newborns and children, and as a result, our revenues are dependent on the birth rates in countries where we operate. In recent years, many countries' birth rates have dropped or have stagnated as their population ages, and education and income levels increase. A continued and significant decline in the number of newborns and children in these countries could have a material adverse effect on our operating results. Now notice how they're looking at education and income levels. They're going up, but they're making it so that people have less children. That means less profit. Damn it. They're looking at that as that if that's a bad thing. Again, that's because, of course, that is their profit margin. But generally, when I look at rising incomes and education levels, you would think that that's a pretty good thing. Not so when it comes to Toys R Us. In fact, the national toy chain announced that it would shutter or sell each of its 735 stores. The country's declining birth rate is not the sole reason, however, for their bankruptcy. They also cite growing competition from online retailers, $4.8 billion worth of debt, the rising popularity of online games, and an increase in labor costs as factors that damaged its business. Now, that $4.8 billion, that kind of got snuck in there, right? That's actually really, really relevant. And let me explain. So, look, Toys R Us, even back in the day, it was struggling with some debt issues, right? So there were some debt issues, and they needed to get bought out. They got bought out by none other than Bain Capital. Bain Capital, of course, is Mitt Romney's old group, and they also got bought out by another company, so it was like a shared buyout. Now, you know how they operate. So they come in and they buy up a company, and then they take the amount that they bought the company for and put it as debt onto the company. And then, of course, they go and loot the rest of the assets. So here's Toys R Us having to get stuck with an enormous debt load into which they, of course, had to pay to service that debt. That money couldn't go into, of course, making their stores a better place to shop or paying their employees. So, yeah, those are some major issues. Now, look, if you're not paying your employee a living wage, I don't think most millennials will actually want to shop there. But again, it's not just that. they are right that millennials are having less children. In fact, millennial women are increasingly delaying parenthood or foregoing it altogether, as reflected by the U.S.'s declining fertility rate. Fertility hit a record low in 2016, bringing the rate among women ages 15 to 44 to 62 births per 1,000 women. Now, some experts are saying that the U.S. is at risk of becoming a demographic time bomb, kind of like Japan. Well, look, if you were a millennial, would you want to have kids? I mean, look, there's a lot of reasons that millennials are not having families. And one of them is because they can't. I mean, the average student loan debt balance is about $37,172. And there are people with six-figure debts from going to college. Student loans are, again, they're over $1 trillion just in America. So, and look, we're the only place that has such high college, because most of the rest of the industrialized world actually has either free college or vastly reduced costs for college. They have some sort of universal education, and they also have universal health care. And these countries often have higher wages than we do. Right now, we have a $7.25 an hour minimum wage. Now, that is actually worth less than the minimum wage was back in 1960. So you actually had more buying power back in the 1960s when you were when the minimum wage was somewhere around $3 an hour. Again, you adjust that to inflation, that's somewhere around a little over $7.25, about $8 in today's dollars. So our dollars today do not our dollars today do not stretch as far as they used to. Now, it's not just that, but look, if you want to have a family, well, it helps to have a home. Well, housing is insane. According to the housing site Zillow, houses and even apartments are too expensive for most young people whose wages until recently weren't going up even as costs were. And according to CNBC's Diana Ulick, now there are no more low-priced homes. Now, Zillow also says homeownership is simply out of reach for many Americans, including many families in today's housing market. More Americans are renting than at any time in recent history. And unfortunately, of course, the rent also continues to go up and up and up and up. So, look, today's buyers, they're not young people. Today's buyers have a median age of 40, are married and living with a partner at 70%, earn a median income of $87,500 annually, and are overwhelmingly white. Zillow's data shows that only 39% of millennials are able to make the standard recommended down payment of 20% or more, and 21% put down the bare minimum in order to secure a home loan. With all of that, all those problems facing millennials, would you want to have kids? Look, maybe instead of blaming millennials, which seems to be really, really popular. Again, millennials have killed yet another industry, yet another company. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we should actually make it so that millennials aren't the most fucked generation in modern history. Do something about the massive student loan debt. Do something about housing prices. Do something about the economy that has been destroyed since Reagan. Maybe if we do something about that, then people might consider actually starting families. Okay. It's frustrating. I guess I should go into something that's fairly connected, and that is, sorry, it's abortion. if you talk to a lot of conservatives, they will tell you that abortion is one of the biggest problems in America. The fact that we're aborting our babies. We're aborting our babies. Billions and millions and millions of babies are being murdered. They're being killed. And if we want to solve this problem, well, then we're going to have to go and try to outlaw abortion. If we just outlaw abortion, abortion goes away, and so does all the evils of society. Now, look, you all know that that's absolutely not true, but nonetheless, I have more data that actually shows that if you have legal abortions and more birth control, turns out abortions happen to decline anyway. Fascinating. Look, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, but nonetheless, apparently some people need to have an explanation, so let's go through it. Now, according to a new report, abortion rates have fallen over the past 25 years, even as more countries made the procedure legal and easier to get. Well, that's interesting. Again, we keep getting told that if we allow legal abortion, then everybody's going to go out and get an abortion, because abortion is the most fun thing, apparently, you can do if you're a woman. I don't know. But that's what I hear from a lot of so-called people who are pro-life. Now, what's interesting is that when we look at countries that have done what conservatives want us to do, which is restrict abortion, we find that they have the highest rates of abortion. Weird how that works out. Now, this study, of course, was done by the Guttmacher Institute, and it found that easier access to birth control happens to drive down abortion rates. Now, they found that 56 million abortions occur each year, nearly 50 million of them in developing countries, and they found that a quarter of all pregnancies happen to end in abortion. Now, here's the interesting thing about the numbers, right? Now, because there are so many women of childbearing age, the number of abortions has gone up. However, the rate per 1,000 women have fallen. So, look, there's just more women out there, and more women actually having more choice. That's why the numbers have gone up, but the rate is actually down, which is very interesting. Now, who's got the lowest abortion? What countries? Well, this would be Switzerland. They actually had the lowest abortion rate at 5 per 1,000 women. Now, what do we know about Switzerland? Oh, right, they have a little bit of a welfare state. So they've got universal health care. They have, of course, pre-K, things like that, and a pretty healthy wage. Pretty healthy populace, healthy economy, things like that. So they're slightly socialistic in what they do. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Maybe it does. Now, the U.S. rate is 13 per 1,000 women, the same as Great Britain's, or the U.K. And what countries are the highest? Colombia, Mexico, and Pakistan. Pakistan actually had the highest at 50 per 1,000 women. Fundamentalist Muslim country. Now, the report says abortions take place all over the world, no matter the legal setting, but it adds provision of abortion is safest where it's long been legal. Nonetheless, some countries with broadly liberal laws have increasingly added restrictions that chip away at access to legal procedures. These include the United States, sadly, and several countries in the former Soviet bloc or zone of influence. Now, they have an example of that. Mississippi's governor just signed a law banning most abortions after 15 weeks. Now, that is illegal under Roe v. Wade, but then again, look, the Republicans right now, they have the courts. So what are they hoping for? They're hoping for one of these cases to get to the Supreme Court, so while they're in charge, they can eliminate Roe v. Wade. That's what they would love to do. And of course, that would bring women's rights back years, decades. Now, not only that, but the Trump Health and Human Services Department has reversed Obama-era policies that made contraception more freely available and that used evidence-based approaches to fight teen pregnancy. So how dare we use evidence-based approach? No, we're going to go and use our propaganda, which says abstinence only, as if that works, as if you can get people to stop having sex. Not going to work. Not going to work. Although, when you look like Donald Trump. Or Eric or Don Jr. Anyway, now, look, this report, of course, it shows that, as I said, with more birth control, for example, if you get no-cost birth control, the number of unplanned pregnancies and abortions fall. And this 2012 study said that they fell by 62 to 78%. Of course, you allow people to have access to birth control, yes, then there's going to be less pregnancy. There's going to be less unintended pregnancy. There's going to be less abortion. Again, all of this stuff should be common sense. But unfortunately, it does not seem to be. Now, the highest abortion rates, I think I mentioned that before. Some of the highest abortion rates are found in places where abortion is restricted legally. That is Latin America and the Caribbean. And you also have some other places that I mentioned earlier. The report found that highly restrictive laws do not eliminate the practice of abortion, but make those that do occur more likely to be unsafe. Now, let me show you an example of why they would be more unsafe. Guttmacher found that what happens to women in developing nations that do not have access to abortion services, they turn to traditional methods. That includes inserting sticks, roots, bones, wires, ground seeds, or chemicals into the uterus, instilling bleach, salt water, detergent, or soap into the uterus, drinking alcohol, detergent, bleach, tea, or certain herbs, taking aspirin, painkillers, laxatives, hormones, or other medications, beating or pushing on the abdomen or jumping from heights, blowing air into the vagina or placing a hot stone on the abdomen to melt the fetus. Not only do these methods often fail, the report says they can lead to severe complications. So this is what happens in places where you don't have safe, legal abortion. This is a country that the Republicans, that Donald Trump, want to bring us back to. This is your pro-life utopia. We're not interested in that. And look, again, this is not factual. Being anti-abortion and anti-contraception doesn't work. You can be one or the other. You can't be both. You can be against, you can be against abortion and be somebody who is like, okay, yes, let's make sure people are educated. Let's make sure that everybody has access to low cost or no cost contraception. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to work out that way. The people that tend to be so stridently anti-abortion also seem to be very, very stridently anti-contraception and anti-sexual education. And so I don't know if there's anything that we can do to actually fix that, because it seems like all the education in the world doesn't get through to some people. But that's something that we need to actually look. What we need to do is we need to try and protect Roe v. Wade the best that we can, and actually try to vote for politicians that will protect people's right to choose. Because look, if we end up losing Roe v. Wade, setting women back years, it might be because of some of the ways that some people have voted. And I'm being 100% honest with that. I don't want to do vote shaming, but Jesus. When people vote for Republicans, when people vote for people like Trump, this is the kind of government that you get. And Mike Pence, this is the government that you get. Okay. All right. Speaking of anti-abortion, let's go over to the Democrats. Nope. There we go. So last night, there was an election in Illinois. Now, as a progressive, I can tell you that it did not turn out very well. In fact, there were several very important races that, again, did not turn out well for progressives and actually turned out very well for the establishment. Now, one of these elections was, and this was a primary between Dan Lipinski and Mary Newman. Now, this is Illinois' 3rd district. And look, that district seems to be fairly liberal, but apparently it's not fairly progressive. 55% of the district voted for Hillary Clinton back in 2016, while about 40% voted for Donald Trump. So this is considered actually a very safe liberal seat. Again, liberal seat, not progressive seat, as Newman, who barely lost this election, can attest to. Now, Lipinski is one of the most conservative Democrats to ever serve. Now, he will be running against a Nazi. I'm not kidding. He's running against a literal Nazi. This is somebody who used to run a Nazi party. Now, he ran unopposed as a Republican, of course. And so you have, this is Arthur Jones. That's the Nazi, and versus very conservative Democrat Dan Lipinski. Now, let me give you some details about Jones here. Now, his 2018 campaign website says that the Holocaust is, quote, the biggest, blackest lie in history, made up by the organized Jewry to extort and terrorize others. Lovely. Sounds like a lovely guy. He opposes interracial marriage and said that African Americans shot by police got what was coming to them. He uses the N-word and admits to freely using the N-word, and said that his goal is the preservation of America as a white country. Now, he's also very anti-LGBT, very anti-women. He said, the queers are going to go back in your closet. So that's who this guy is. Now, the reason that I bring him up is, again, he's an oddity. He's actually doesn't have a very good chance of winning. And the only reason that he won the primary, actually, is that he ran unopposed. The Republican Party's like, no, we're not interested. We're not interested at all in running in this area because it is a safe Democratic district. Now, this is to show you, this is to illustrate why it makes no sense to vote for a conservative Democrat. As I said before, in a lot of these races, the establishment will say, well, you have to have somebody that's conservative in order to win in some of these areas, right? I mean, you got to have somebody that will play nice with the Republicans and will do some bipartisanship, and, you know, you can't go crazy and leftist. No, you got to be a moderate. Well, not in this district. Because, and again, Lipinski is a very, very conservative Democrat. And I'm going to lay out his positions here in a minute, but there would be no reason to run a moderate, centrist, more conservative Democrat in this district, because every time you have a literal Nazi that they're running against. And if you can't beat a literal Nazi, well, then you might as well just give up. But again, Lipinski will beat this guy. So why not have a progressive? Well, that was a question that Mary Newman asked herself, and she said, oh, why not a progressive? So she ran, and she ran an excellent race. But unfortunately, Lipinski had a lot of advantages on his side: incumbency, money, etc., name recognition, all that stuff. So he was able to squeeze out a win. So now the disastrous part about this is the policies that Lipinski is running on. In fact, Lipinski voted against the Affordable Care Act. He voted against the DREAM Act, and also is anti-abortion. He is anti-choice. But wait, if this is such a secure blue seat, why is there somebody running who could be the Republican? I know why Republicans don't run in that race, because they already have one. It's Dan Lipinski. Jesus. Not only that, but he has the lowest score on the HRC's congressional scorecard. That's the Human Rights Campaign. He refused to co-sponsor LGBT right bills like the Student Non-Discrimination Act and the Equality Act. Not only that, but he opposed efforts by the congressional Democrats to repeal DOMA and has continued to say that he opposes marriage equality. And in 2015, Lipinski was the only Democrat to co-sponsor the First Amendment Defense Act, a bill that would have banned discrimination based on someone's belief that marriage should be limited to a man and a woman, heterosexual couples. And in 2016, he supported the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which would have permitted businesses to discriminate against LGBT people. Now, look, this guy, again, ran against a real progressive, Marie Newman. Now, Marie Newman, again, she was far more progressive on her policy positions, single payer, etc., right? But she was also backed by some of the establishment, because it turns out Lipinski is so toxic, even the establishment Emily's List, which we've had problems with before, right? Backing candidates that decided that they would go against the progressive challengers, I should say, that defended against progressive challengers. So you had Planned Parenthood, the DCCC, also on Marie Newman's side. And yet still somehow Dan Lipinski won. Again, he had all the advantages. He had name recognition. He had money. He had Mike Madigan on his side. He's a big power broker there in Illinois. So, look, incumbency is incredibly powerful. The money is also incredibly powerful. Name recognition, incredibly powerful. And you have the Democratic machine, which unfortunately lined up behind Lipinski. He had the unions. Look, I'm a union guy. But why would you not vote for a more progressive candidate who actually might be even better for the unions? It doesn't make any sense. But of course, again, power is entrenched power. And there are these organizations that want to keep this power. So, and unfortunately, that's Lipinski. Super conservative Democrat. Somebody that should belong to, by all rights, the Republican Party. Getting unfortunately supported by the Democratic Party, by the Democratic machine in Illinois. That machine needs to be broken. That machine needs to be destroyed. If this is the kind of Democrat that comes out of Illinois, that machine has got to go. It's gross. Okay. I think that's it for the day. I want to thank you guys for going around the nation with me today. Really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for hitting the like button, for sharing, for subscribing. That's the best. You guys are awesome. Sharing is caring, of course. Thank you. I want to thank the patrons, patreon.com/TYTNation, for supporting the show, keeping us independent and non-corporate sponsored. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that's about it. we'll be back tomorrow. We'll have another great show. More stories, of course. And, of course, if you want to send me stories, you can go to my Twitter account, Jeff's Politics, and suggest a story that I do as well. So I'm always taking suggestions. All right, other than that, thank you guys. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. We'll see y'all tomorrow.